Opening scene. Early morning, Midway Island. The sea is calm, the sky pre-dawn gray. At 0530 hours on June 4th, 1942, Lieutenant Howard Addy climbed into his PBY Catalina at Midway Island, unaware that this flight would change the course of the Pacific War. He was 24, Naval Academy class of 1939, flying with Patrol Squadron 23, a crew of 8 men trained for endurance, not combat. The PBY sat heavy on the water, loaded with fuel for a 700-mile search pattern. Somewhere in the vast Pacific, the Japanese fleet was moving toward Midway. Intelligence suggested it. Radio intercepts hinted at it. But nobody knew exactly where or when the enemy would strike. The Catalina was not a fighter. It was a flying endurance machine. Twin engines, a parasol wing mounted high above the fuselage, a cruising speed of 115 miles per hour, slow, lumbering, lightly armed, but capable of staying aloft for 24 hours, covering 2,500 miles, and spotting everything within 50 miles on a clear day. In the endless expanse of the Pacific, where fleets could hide in millions of square miles of ocean, the Catalina was the Navy's solution to an impossible problem. Find the enemy before the enemy finds you. Addy's crew was seasoned but weary. They had flown together for 4 months, patrolling empty ocean day after day. The routine was monotonous. Take off before dawn, fly straight lines across featureless water, return after dark, sleep, repeat. But this morning was different. The base had been on high alert for 3 days. Every aircraft was flying. Marines deployed every fighter they had. Bombers were loaded and ready. Everyone knew the Japanese were coming. The question was when and from what direction. Addy took off at 0415 hours, climbed to cruising altitude, and headed northwest on a bearing of 315 degrees, assigned to sweep a 45 degrees arc extending 700 miles from Midway. He would fly out on one bearing, turn 15 degrees, fly back, repeat, systematically searching 22,000 square miles of ocean. The PBY's advantage was its ability to fly slow and low. While land-based bombers had to maintain speed and altitude, the Catalina could descend to 500 feet, throttle back to 90 knots, and observe every shadow, every wave, every anomaly on the water. For the first time in the war, Americans could see what they were searching for, not just scan radar screens or squint at distant targets. At 0530 hours, 180 miles from Midway, Addy's co-pilot spotted something on the horizon. Columns of black smoke rising from beyond the curve of the Earth. Ships, many ships, moving at high speed. Addy turned toward the smoke, descending to 1,000 feet, and through the morning haze, the Japanese fleet materialized. 2 aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, the main striking force. Immediately, the radio man transmitted the contact report. 2 carriers, main body, bearing 320 degrees, distance 180 miles, course 135 degrees, speed 25 knots. The message, sent at 0534 hours, set in motion the Battle of Midway. Admiral Fletcher received it aboard Yorktown at 0630, and Admiral Spruance aboard Enterprise shortly after. The Japanese fleet had been located. The ambush could begin. But Addy's job was far from over. He needed to maintain contact, updating the fleet on the enemy's course and speed. Meanwhile, Japanese Zero fighters were launching from carriers below. A PBY had no chance in combat. Slow, unmaneuverable, lightly armed. Survival depended on cloud cover, patience, and ingenuity. Addy climbed into the clouds at 4,000 feet, playing a deadly game of cat and mouse. He would emerge miles from the fleet, take a quick observation, transmit updates, and disappear again before the Zeros could intercept. For 3 hours, the Japanese searched frantically, but the PBY remained invisible, a slow, lumbering ghost in the sky. At 0830 hours, after continuous tracking, Addy was relieved by another Catalina and returned to Midway, landing at 1,000 hours. He refueled and took off again at 1,300 hours, continuing patrols as the battle raged. The first sighting at 0530 had given the Americans the edge. The fleet they had been searching for was now vulnerable. Cut to, crew resting briefly, drinking coffee, preparing for the next sortie. The PBY may have been slow, unglamorous, and underarmed, but it did what no other aircraft could. It found the enemy, reported their position, and survived to continue the fight. Opening scene. Twilight over Guadalcanal. The sky is deep purple, the sea almost black. While the PBY's early morning patrols helped win battles like Midway, their mission didn't end with daylight reconnaissance. The Navy soon discovered that the slow, long-endurance Catalina could do something no other aircraft could: fight the night. By late 1942, the Americans were desperate. The Japanese dominated the daylight hours across the Pacific, their fighters controlling the skies, their anti-aircraft guns protecting convoys and supply lines. But night offered opportunity. The enemy could not operate effectively in darkness, and Japanese ships were vulnerable after sunset. Enter Lieutenant Commander Clarence Taff, who transformed the PBY into the Black Cat. His squadron, VP-12, arrived at Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, in December 1942. Taff realized that by painting PBY's map black and changing their tactics, they could strike Japanese shipping under the cover of darkness. Only small red serial numbers marked the aircraft. At night, the Catalinas became invisible predators, moving silently across the ocean. Black Cat missions were dangerous. Standard patrols had been predictable, systematic, but night operations demanded unpredictability. The pilots flew low, sometimes as little as 50 feet above the water, masking their approach with island silhouettes, attacking from unexpected angles, dropping bombs, depth charges, or even improvised explosives, and disappearing into the darkness before the enemy could respond. Cut to low-flying PBY over the ocean, black as night, engines humming quietly. On February 21, 1943, Lieutenant William Goff and his crew recorded one of the Black Cat's most successful missions. They spotted a Japanese destroyer near Kolombangara Island, approached under darkness, and released two 500-pound bombs at 800 yards. Both hit. The destroyer exploded, sinking within minutes. But the missions were perilous. Flying large, slow aircraft at night over the open ocean meant risking spatial disorientation, mechanical failures, and navigation errors. Of the 7 original Black Cat PBYs deployed to Guadalcanal, 4 were lost within 2 months, not all due to enemy action. Survival depended on skill, courage, and sometimes sheer luck. Cut to crew in the cockpit, eyes straining in the darkness, hands on throttles, listening to waves. The Black Cats were psychological weapons as much as physical ones. Japanese sailors reported that black-painted Catalinas could appear from nowhere, strike, and vanish like predatory cats in the night. Convoys had to increase lookouts and maintain blackout conditions, slowing operations and reducing morale. The sound of a PBY's twin engines became a symbol of fear in the darkness. But the PBYs weren't just night fighters. They became lifesavers. By mid-1943, hundreds of American aircraft were operating over thousands of miles of ocean. When planes went down, crews faced death from exposure, drowning, or sharks. The Catalina became the Navy's primary rescue aircraft. Cut to sunrise over a rough ocean, a PBY approaching life rafts bobbing in the waves. The most famous rescue came on April 18, 1943. Captain Eddie Rickenbacker, America's top ace from World War I, survived 24 days at sea with 7 crew members after his bomber went down. They were spotted and rescued by Lieutenant William Eddy, landing his PBY in 8-foot swells, a maneuver that could easily capsize the aircraft. All survived. Other rescues were just as heroic, though less famous. Lieutenant Nathan Gordon, Squadron VP-34, received the Medal of Honor for rescuing 15 sailors under enemy fire at Cavayang in 1944. He made 3 separate landings in a PBY under hostile fire to pull survivors from the water. The PBY hull, designed to handle rough seas, enabled such daring rescues, turning a slow patrol plane into a life-saving vessel. By 1944, the Navy had formalized Dumbo missions, named after the Disney elephant. PBYs would orbit near strike operations, ready to rescue downed airmen. The knowledge that a Dumbo aircraft was nearby made fighter pilots more aggressive. They knew someone would come for them if they went down. Cut to montage of PBYs dropping smoke flares, picking up survivors, and taking off into the rising sun. The Catalina also pioneered long-range medical evacuation. With its ability to land on water and long endurance, wounded soldiers could be taken from remote islands to hospitals. PBYs could carry 8 stretchers, often providing in-flight care. In January 1944, a PBY from Squadron VP-43 evacuated a critically wounded Marine from a river mouth barely wider than the wingspan. The pilot flew treetop height, landed perfectly, loaded the patient, and took off down the narrow channel. The Marine survived because of the PBY's range, skill, and versatility. But the Catalina's impact went beyond combat and rescues. By 1943, modified PBYs carried early radar systems, detecting ships and aircraft in darkness or bad weather. They became the Navy's first airborne early warning aircraft, guiding fleets and shaping battles even when pilots could not see the enemy. Closing scene. PBY flying over a misty Pacific horizon silhouetted against dawn. From Black Cat night attacks to rescue missions and radar surveillance, the PBY Catalina proved that information, adaptability, and endurance could be as decisive as firepower. It turned a slow, awkward flying boat into a legend of the Pacific War. Opening scene. Dawn breaks over the endless Pacific. Waves glisten under a pale sun, and a lone PBY Catalina glides across the horizon. By 1943, the PBY Catalina had proven itself not just as a scout or night attacker, but as a lifesaver in a vast and unforgiving ocean. For every daring Black Cat strike, there were countless Dumbo missions, rescue operations that saved pilots, crews, and sailors from almost certain death. The Pacific War stretched across thousands of miles, with countless air and naval operations. Every bomber or fighter that went down over the ocean faced exposure, drowning, or shark attacks. The PBY, slow and unarmed, became the Navy's primary rescue aircraft, risking its own crew to save others. Cut to a PBY descending into rough 8-foot swells, engines straining, crew tense. The most famous of these missions was the rescue of Captain Eddie Rickenbacker, America's top World War I ace. After surviving 24 days at sea with 7 crewmen following a downed B-17, he was finally spotted by Lieutenant William Eddy, flying a PBY from Squadron VP-51. Eddie's landing in towering swells was extremely dangerous, but he rescued every survivor, proving that the PBY could accomplish what seemed impossible. Other rescues were equally heroic, but less publicized. Lieutenant Nathan Gordon, Squadron VP-34, became a legend when he rescued 15 sailors under enemy fire in the harbor of Cavite, February 15, 1944. Gordon made 3 separate landings in hostile waters, each one under threat from Japanese fighters and anti-aircraft fire. The slow, unarmed PBY relied on skill, daring, and its robust hull to bring survivors home. Cut to crew inside the PBY, reviving rescued sailors, offering blankets and coffee, tension easing for a brief moment. The Dumbo missions soon became a systematic part of naval operations. PBYs would orbit near strike areas, ready to pick up downed airmen. Fighter pilots took heart from this, knowing that even if they went down, rescue was possible. These missions saved thousands of lives, cementing the Catalina as more than a reconnaissance or attack aircraft. It became a guardian of the skies and seas. The PBY's role in medical evacuations was equally remarkable. Its long range and water landing capability made it ideal for remote extraction of wounded personnel. PBYs could carry up to 8 stretchers, often with medical corpsmen providing care mid-flight. In January 1944, a PBY from Squadron VP-43 evacuated a critically wounded Marine from a narrow river mouth in the Solomons. The pilot flew treetop level, landed in a space no wider than the wingspan, and took off with the patient safely aboard. Missions like these showcase the precision, skill, and bravery of the Catalina crews. Cut to nighttime patrol over islands, PBY silhouetted in moonlight, engines a low hum against the waves. Beyond rescues, the PBY contributed to intelligence gathering and early radar operations. Modified Catalinas carried early radar systems capable of detecting ships and aircraft at night or in bad weather, long before other aircraft could see them. They guided fleets through foggy channels, tracked enemy submarines, and provided early warnings that were crucial for successful operations. For instance, Squadron VP-63 in Alaska used radar-equipped PBYs to direct naval forces during fog-bound operations in the Aleutians, preventing disorientation and vulnerability during critical invasions. The Catalina was also versatile in Allied service. The Royal Air Force operated over 600 Catalinas for anti-submarine patrols in the Atlantic. The Royal Canadian Air Force flew them on both coasts, guarding convoys and searching for German U-boats. The Soviet Navy received 189 Catalinas through Lend-Lease, flying them in the Arctic and Pacific. The Royal Australian Air Force used them to maintain communications with coast watchers and supply isolated islands, a role nicknamed Milk Runs. Cut to montage of PBYs taking off from tropical lagoons, flying across icy Arctic seas, and skimming over coastal islands to deliver supplies. Flying these missions demanded extraordinary courage. Crews operated alone, often unarmed, landing in enemy-controlled waters or flying long patrols in harsh climates. Australian pilot G.H. Hemsworth completed 112 milk runs, more than anyone else. He was shot down 3 times yet survived, embodying the PBY crew's resilience. Even during the war, PBYs were adapted for special missions. The Black Cat night raids had evolved, Dumbo rescues became formalized, and radar-equipped variants guided fleets across hazardous waters. Each mission demonstrated the Catalina's versatility. An aircraft designed for endurance, now executing tasks ranging from combat reconnaissance to medical evacuation, intelligence collection, and search and rescue. Closing scene. Sunset over the Pacific, multiple PBYs silhouetted against fiery skies, water reflecting the glow, a fleet of possibilities ahead. By the end of 1943, the PBY had proven indispensable. Slow and ungainly, yes, but capable of feats no other aircraft could achieve. It saved lives, provided intelligence, and became a symbol of endurance and ingenuity in the Pacific. Opening scene, midnight over the Solomons. A black-painted PBY glides silently above the waves, its engines a low, ominous hum. By 1943, the Black Cat squadrons had become a persistent nightmare for Japanese forces across the Pacific. These matte black Catalinas operated at night, striking enemy shipping in darkness, and then vanishing before daylight. The Japanese had once ruled the skies and seas with confidence, but the Black Cats changed the game. Flying at 50 to 100 feet above the water, the Black Cats used island silhouettes and moonless nights to mask their approach. Their targets were often supply convoys and small warships, crucial for Japanese operations in the Solomons, the Philippines, and beyond. Precision, timing, and surprise were everything. Cut to low-angle shot of a Catalina releasing bombs on a Japanese destroyer, the explosion illuminating the dark ocean. On September 1943, a VP-54 PBY was caught by Japanese searchlights while on a night attack. The pilot, reacting instinctively, dove to wave height, engines screaming, narrowly avoiding anti-aircraft fire. The aircraft slipped between 2 destroyers so low that the ships could not depress their guns enough to hit it. In the chaos, the destroyers ended up firing at each other. The Catalina survived, its crew unharmed, its mission accomplished. These missions were not just tactical, they were psychological warfare. Japanese sailors reported sightings of shadowy, black-painted aircraft appearing from nowhere, striking at night and disappearing like ghosts. Supply convoys had to post extra lookouts, maintain blackouts, and slow operations, sapping efficiency and morale. The distinctive hum of the PBY engines became a harbinger of fear for Japanese crews navigating the dark Pacific. Cut to crew inside a PBY, monitoring instruments, listening for any sign of enemy ships or aircraft. But night attacks were not without danger. Navigational errors, mechanical failures, and unpredictable weather made flying a large, slow plane at night extremely perilous. Crews faced the constant risk of spatial disorientation, crashing into the ocean or unseen obstacles. Of the original Black Cats, nearly half were lost within 2 months, a testament to the danger they accepted. Yet the PBY's versatility kept evolving. In addition to night attacks, Black Cat crews performed mining operations, laying bombs and torpedoes in Japanese harbors under the cover of darkness. They interdicted barge traffic between islands, disrupting the so-called Tokyo Express, the Japanese nightly supply runs to their forces. Cut to Black Cat Catalina skimming the water, dropping torpedoes, vanishing into fog. The Catalina's contribution to the war went far beyond offense. Rescue operations, the Dumbo missions, continued to save thousands of airmen and sailors. Crews became adept at landing in rough seas, often under fire, extracting survivors from life rafts, wrecked ships, or isolated islands. Lieutenant Nathan Gordon became a living legend, landing repeatedly in enemy-controlled waters to save trapped sailors. Each mission required the hull's exceptional seaworthiness, the crew's courage, and unwavering precision. Cut to Montage of rescued sailors aboard a PBY, wrapped in blankets, drinking hot coffee, relief on their faces. Meanwhile, the Catalina's intelligence-gathering capabilities expanded. Early radar-equipped PBYs tracked enemy movements during storms, fog, and darkness, conditions that grounded other aircraft. They guided fleets, coordinated attacks, and provided early warning of Japanese advances, proving that information could be as lethal as weapons. Cut to radar screens flickering inside the PBY, operators pointing out targets, pilots adjusting course, coordinating with fleet commands. The PBY also proved crucial in medical evacuations, transporting wounded from remote battlefields to field hospitals. Landing in narrow rivers, lagoons, or reefs, crews risked capsizing, collision, or enemy fire. These missions showcased not just the aircraft's capabilities, but the human bravery behind each sortie. The Catalina became a lifeline, a silent guardian, and an unassuming warrior across the Pacific. By late 1943, the PBY had demonstrated unmatched endurance, versatility, and reliability. From night raids as black cats to rescue missions and medical evacuations, the Catalina was indispensable. It was never glamorous, often slow and ungainly, but its impact on the war was monumental. Closing scene: dawn breaking over the Pacific. A PBY rises from the waves, silhouetted against the sun, engines humming, a symbol of persistence, courage, and quiet heroism. The men who flew Catalinas rarely received the same recognition as fighter pilots or bomber crews. Their work, long patrols, daring rescues, stealth attacks, was essential to victory, often invisible, yet indispensable. In a war where information, endurance, and ingenuity could tip the scales, the PBY Catalina proved that sometimes slow and steady truly wins the day. Opening scene: sunrise over the calm Pacific, a PBY Catalina flying gracefully above the endless horizon. By 1944 to 1945, the PBY Catalina had cemented its reputation as the workhorse of the Pacific. From reconnaissance and night raids to daring rescues and medical evacuations, this slow, ungainly aircraft had proven its indispensable versatility. Even as the war approached its final stages, PBYs continued to serve on front lines and remote outposts. Crews flew missions across Okinawa, the Philippines, New Guinea, and the Aleutians, often covering hundreds of miles over hostile waters. The aircraft's endurance, ability to land on water, and reliability in harsh conditions allowed it to perform tasks no other aircraft could. Cut to PBY taxiing on a lagoon, crew performing final checks, ready for a long patrol. One of the PBY's final wartime missions occurred on August 14, 1945, near the Japanese home islands. Squadrons were patrolling the sea, unaware that Japan had agreed to surrender. PBYs completed their patrols, marking the last operational flights of the Catalina in World War II. These flights closed a chapter that began with daring reconnaissance at Midway, Black Cat night raids, and countless rescues at sea. Cut to flashback montage: Midway, Black Cat attacks, Dumbo rescues, radar operations, showing the PBY's journey across the Pacific War. After the war, many PBYs continued flying. Smaller nations acquired surplus Catalinas for their air forces. Civilian operators adapted them for passenger flights, delivering people and mail to remote islands. Others became firefighting aircraft, scooping water from lakes and rivers to fight wildfires. Even decades later, some PBYs remained in service, a testament to the robust and enduring design of the aircraft. Cut to modern footage of a restored PBY flying, propellers churning, waves sparkling below. The Catalina's legacy is not in speed or firepower, but in mission accomplishment, resilience, and ingenuity. It found enemy fleets in vast oceans, rescued thousands from death, and maintained the flow of intelligence that shaped the outcome of battles. The PBY proved that in modern warfare, information, adaptability, and courage often outweigh brute force. Cut to crew members from different squadrons, faces weathered but proud, standing beside their PBYs, honoring the aircraft that served them. Lieutenant Howard Oddie, the young pilot who spotted the Japanese fleet at Midway, survived the war and retired as a Navy captain. He rarely spoke of that fateful morning, saying simply that he was just doing his job. That humility reflects the thousands of PBY crews whose steady, unglamorous work kept operations running, patrol after patrol, over millions of miles of ocean. Cut to slow-motion shots of PBYs lifting off from calm waters, engines roaring softly, the sun reflecting off the wings. A final salute to their role in history. By the end of the war, over 3,000 PBY Catalinas had been built, serving in the United States Navy, Allied forces, and multiple theaters across the globe. They carried out missions ranging from reconnaissance and combat to rescue and transport, often under extreme danger. The Catalina proved that victory depends on persistence, observation, and the courage to face the impossible, not just speed or firepower. Closing scene. Fade to black, sound of distant ocean waves and a PBY engine hum. Text overlay. In memory of the men and women who flew the PBY Catalina, the slow, steady guardians of the Pacific.